Greetings, this is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct tonight from Black Facts Headquarters Central here in lovely Kent, Ohio. Once again, we are with you in spirit and in fact, and we are about to do what we like to do, and that is to share some Black Facts with all of you. Now, before we get into the same for the evening, let's go ahead and make sure we go through things step by step and don't skip any steps. So, number one, if you're watching this on Facebook, go ahead and give us a like. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. And then spread that word far and wide, from side to side, all up and down. Just spread it all over the land. If you don't mind, that would give us a hand. Meanwhile, we're going to give you our saying of the day. The saying of the day is really, it's more of a question. And the question is, what is genius? Is genius something that everybody has, like 2 hands and 2 feet? Or is it something that only the elite of society have, that only a few people can ever attain a level of genius? That's the question. We're not going to give you the answer. We're going to let you figure that out for yourself. Now, we're going to be going over some of the stories of some of these old inventors and scientists. We focused on one most of this week, Garrett Morgan, coming out of Cleveland, Ohio. And we learned a few things, not only about him, but just about the that history itself, that there appear to be some gaps, some very noticeable gaps. When I go to look for biographies on Marcus Garvey, I can find all kinds of information on Marcus Garvey. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael. I can find big, thick books about them and little bitty books about them, books for children, all kinds of books about them. But when it comes down to our Black scientists and inventors, all of a sudden, there are very few books. So we're going to have to get kind of creative. So for tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go black, way black into time. And we're going to read about one of America's favorite Black inventors. Such a favorite, in fact, that he even had a coin minted with his image on the coin. Matter of fact, this coin had him on it, as well as Booker, none other than Booker T. Washington. That's right, the one and only Booker T. Now, some of you maybe have some relatives out there named Booker T. If you're anything like me, I had a uncle who was a great uncle, actually, and his name was Booker T as well. But in this case, we're talking about the one and only original Booker T. Washington. So we'll start off, we'll read his story tonight, and then we'll move on to a new story tomorrow night. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and share this story with you. And here we glow. There we go. And there is the coin I was just telling you about. And I think that's on a silver dollar. It doesn't say on, oh, there it is. It's a $50. That was a $50, a 50-cent piece. Okay, and you can see it's got the image of George Washington Carver on top of none other than Booker T. Washington. So we actually have 2 Washingtons here. This is a double Washington coin with Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. And we're going to be reading again from our African American Book of Values, because it's such a valuable book. Really, truly is a gem of a book. Okay, and let's see if we can get these slides to roll the way we want to. See what we can do tonight. Giant of science, George Washington Carver, born around about 1864, because obviously he was born just at the end of slavery. And he lived all the way up until 1943. So he lived well into his 80s. He's perhaps the nation's most celebrated African American scientist. Many remember the slave-born educator and scientist only because of one simple plant, and that is the peanut. Yes, many people have actually summed George Washington Carver's life up into the shell of a peanut. But the thing about a peanut is when you take that nut out of the shell or when you plant that nut with the shell in the ground, it will grow into a large plant and produce many more peanuts that could cover a whole field with peanuts. And we could live off of those peanuts. There's so many things that you could make out of peanuts, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Some of those things that George Washington Carver found he could do with peanuts, because he could do more with a like many black people who could do more with a dollar than a monkey could do with a peanut. Washington Carver, he was almost the reverse of that. He could do more with a peanut than we could do with a dollar. There you go. So here we go. George Washington Carver is remembered for having the biggest green thumbs in American history. He spent his childhood reportedly talking to flowers, literally, and had been known in his adulthood to stay up all night to watch a plant bloom. Yet his life was anything but pastoral. It started in 1864 or maybe 65 in Missouri when he was born into slavery. And with incredible violence. Often bushwhackers would raid farms demanding money. While George was still an infant, a band of men kidnapped both him and his mama. A Union scout tracked the band to Confederate Arkansas, and as one story goes, swapped the baby for a $300 racehorse, if you can imagine that. The scout returned with George, who was sickly by then. George's mother was never heard from again. When slavery ended, Carver attended a school for black children. Then he wandered the Midwest, completing high school in Kansas. He went on to study botany and agriculture at Iowa State College. Now that college is also the very same one where that Jack Trice went to, where they have a statue today of Jack Trice, an African-American football player from Hiram, Ohio, who they've also named their stadium after, Jack Trice. When slavery ended, he went to a school for black children, wandered the Midwest, completed high school in Kansas, and then he went on to study at Iowa State, becoming the school's first black graduate in 1894. He studied botany for his master's degree, concentrating on mycology, a branch of botany dealing with fungi. And if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to go to Netflix and check out the Netflix documentary on mushrooms, because there's more to a mushroom than you think. He often took walks in the woods to gather specimens, eventually contributing some 15,000 specimens to the college herbarium. while he was still a postgraduate student. He received his master's degree in 1896. Carver received a teaching offer then from Booker T. Washington, founder of Tuskegee Institute. Washington's letter read, "I cannot offer you money, position, or fame. The first two you already have." Oh, in other words, money and position. From the place you now occupy, you will no doubt achieve. The first two you have, the last, from the place you now occupy, you will no doubt achieve. These things I now ask you to give up. I offer you in their place work, hard work. The task of bringing a people from degradation, poverty, and waste to full manhood. Carver thought and finally replied, saying it had always been the one great ideal of my life to be of the greatest good to the greatest number of my people possible. And that education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom to our people. Once he arrived at Tuskegee, he was frank. He said, "Your department exists only on paper, and your laboratory will have to be in your head." Undismayed, he went about improvising, building a makeshift lab from discarded items and scraps found around campus. From a heavy teacup, he made a mortar. A kerosene lamp became his Bunsen burner. He wasted nothing, and in the end, through both his laboratory and his farming activities, he was able to transform agricultural practices across the entire South. He was able to transform agricultural practices across the South, reaching both black and white farmers. In 1897, he was named the first director of the Tuskegee Agricultural Experimental Station, funded by the government. There, he taught farming techniques and printed bulletins on crops suitable for the overworked soil of the region. He also started the first movable school in the South, a mule-drawn wagon packed with farm education material moving from farm to farm to farm. Carver and his assistant demonstrated farming methods. By the summer of 1906, the wagon reached 2,000 farmers a month. Eventually, it became part of a federal program employing more than 800 black farmers. Carver taught pragmatic farming methods on a 20-acre parcel of poor land. He had his students plant cowpeas, which served as fertilizer, and resupplied the overused soil with nitrates. Next, he planted sweet potatoes and then cotton. The formerly poor land yielded 500 pounds of crop per acre, more than any farm in the area had ever harvested. Local farmers took notice, acting on his recommendation for crop rotation, which could rejuvenate soil that had been depleted for so long by one crop cotton or tobacco farming. This had been the way of the South. This had been the way of the slave owners. This had been the way of the antebellum South for years, decades, and should we even go into the centuries. He encouraged farmers to make wise use of natural resources, even waste, such as leaves, garbage, paper, grass, and rags. And while other agricultural stations focused on pure science, Carver focused on applied science. His farming bulletins served as how-to publications, complete with recipes. Bulletin number 31 was how to grow the peanut and 100 ways of preparing it for human consumption. 105 ways, I should say. Over 44 years, he published bulletins touching on subjects of interest to the local farmers, from rebuilding depleted soil to pickling and curing meat. He pushed peanut farming so well that it ended up replacing cotton as the number one crop in the farming belt from Alabama all the way into Florida. The oversupply of peanuts prompted Carver to lock himself in his lab to concoct new uses for them. Days later, he reemerged, having devised more than 24 new products. Over time, he developed 300 peanut-based products, including milk, cheese, face powder, butter, shampoo, printers, ink, vinegar, coffee, salads, soaps, and wood stains. These efforts alone brought farmers tens of millions of dollars in additional revenue. He also developed new uses for other crops, including synthetic marble made from sawdust and sweet potato rubber, inventing new industrial uses for agricultural products. Or chemurgy was unknown at the time, and his lab was, in a sense, a forerunner of the research and design departments of many of today's large corporations. Thomas Edison and Henry Ford took notes. Carver's fame spread not just to Washington, D.C., but overseas, as to help food efforts in African regions where the disease-ridden tsetse fly infested dairy herds. He invented a nourishing milk made from peanuts, which were widely grown there. He pointed out that man was a more effective milk producer than cows. It takes the cow 24 hours to make milk. I can make from peanuts better, cleaner, and more healthful milk in 5 minutes. The cow simply takes out of the food she eats what is soluble, which is the cleaner process, that of grinding, moistening, heating, and filtering in a machine or pan, or passing cereals, vegetables, or the vegetable matter a cow eats through her stomach. Carver's teaching philosophy centered on understanding relationships. Instead of studying various sciences in isolation, his studies studied one particular object in depth, the cowpea, for instance. He showed how each of the sciences, meteorology, chemistry, entomology, produced a combined effect on the cowpea. He also taught that nature does not produce waste. Waste results from man's failure to efficiently use natural resources. In class, he illustrated this concept holding a tangled knot of string that apparently was no longer useful. Next to it, he held a neatly tied and wound piece of string, which his students could easily see was still useful. Ignorance was like a tangled mass of string, he said. Intelligence brought order and usefulness, he added, holding up the neatly wound string. Natural resources can be used again and again in much the same way. But Carver gradually shifted his focus from teaching to creative chemistry, helping industry profit, yet not reaping rewards from his own work. He acquired only 3 patents in his entire career, which earned him little, and he rejected the job Thomas Edison reportedly had offered him. He died in 1943. Honors did not end with his death, however. In addition to a museum bearing his name, many public schools were named for him. In 1949, a U.S. postage stamp memorialized his achievements. A naval vessel has been named for him. And the first national monument to commemorate an African American was built at his birth site near Diamond, Missouri. And this was the life and the love of Carter G. Woodson. This now forms his legacy. His legacy is popping up all over the place and yielding fruits, still bearing fruits, because anything with a seed inside is a fruit, including the peanut, the ever-present peanut. And you know, I do love some peanut butter. I haven't tried all those other products that he talked about, but I do make my own milk from seeds. I make seed milk every single day, and I've been living on that since the 1980s, 1986, 96, 206, 216. So coming up on 40 years. I drink 16 ounces of seed milk per day and live on just one meal, because 90% of what we, no, 10% of what we eat, we need to eat to survive. Our bodies need to survive. 90% of what we eat, the doctors need us to eat so they can survive. And that's what's keeping them in the pink, so to speak. Or you might want to say even better than that, in the black. That's what's keeping those doctors in the black. It has to do with what we eat. We are literally eating ourselves to death. So George Washington Carver, damn right, still relevant. Okay? If you eat, George Washington Carver is relevant. If you need wood or any kind of synthetic anything, George Washington Carver is still relevant. George Washington Carver, still relevant today because he dealt with the basics. And so sometimes, no, every single time, it's always good to return to the basics. We need to keep those basics always in mind. Meanwhile, we're going to clock out here. All you little children out there, you know what time it is. I don't need to give you no quiz. You know what you need to do right now is lay that little head on that little pillow, on that little bed, and close those eyes and wait for that sun to rise. And when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, do not despise the sunbeams on your eyes, because all that's trying to do is let you know what time it is. It's time to wake up and seize the day, for every day is a gift. That's why they call it the present. So now, I gave y'all at least 4 or 5 different sayings today. I hope y'all remember them and use them in your everyday lives. Meanwhile, for all you adults out there, you know what I need you to do. If you're watching on Facebook, give us a like. If you're on the tube, give us a thumbs up. And last but not least, it's the first of the month. You know what time it is. This ain't what I call Mother's Day. This is Father's Day and Mother's Day. This is Black Family Day. This is the day we're asking all of you out there, if you have some money, donate a little bit to Black Facts. If you don't have any money, that's okay too. Just go ahead and set up a donation page on your, or a donation, I guess it's I would call it like a page. It's kind of like a page on your Facebook, in your Facebook area, you can set it up that you are soliciting donations for Black Facts Educational Research Incorporated. And if we had enough people doing this, those friends and family that do have some money would be alerted to the fact that Black Facts is here and we're dependent on you to be able to make it through. So please help us out. Don't stop, because it's time to go. Go ahead, do it right now. Don't be shy. You can do it if you try. And in the meanwhile, we'll be back tomorrow with another installment of a playlist. So look for a playlist tomorrow. Tomorrow's playlist will have the same name as tonight's presentation, Black Genius. And we're going to focus on Black Genius for the rest of the month. In the meanwhile, peace out without a doubt with justice, because anything less disgusts us. And as I'm going out, I'm just going to give a wave to Tony over there and Shakur. And I saw some other folks out there. Nkosi, Tashaka, I see you over there. Who else I see out there? Anybody else? Okay, and there we go. Peace out, y'all. There we go.